All right, we're about to take a little trip back in time. But we're not going to focus on the usual kings and castles. Nope. We are diving headfirst into the truly strange, kind of shocking, and sometimes downright hilarious trends of the medieval period. You know, we look at some of the stuff we do today, the fashion, the viral challenges, and we think we're pretty out there. But trust me, when it comes to pure, baffling weirdness, we have absolutely nothing on our ancestors.
Yeah, because what they considered normal was on a whole other level of bizarre. Okay, let's get into it and see just how strange things could really get.
We're going to start with something that feels familiar: sports. You know, we think of them as having clear rules, boundaries, all that stuff. Well, back in the Middle Ages, even a game of football was just pure chaos.
I mean, just look at the sheer anarchy here. This wasn't a game. It was basically a riot with a ball. You had entire villages going up against each other, using the whole town as their field. No player limits, and the only real rule was, and I am dead serious, no murdering your opponent. Anything short of that was pretty much fair game.
That's right. The game was so violent and so destructive that the actual King of England had to step in and outlaw it completely. Can you imagine a sport today being so dangerous that it gets banned by a royal decree? So if you thought lawless football was strange, you might want to buckle up. Our next topic is all about law-abiding animals, or more accurately, law-breaking ones that were formally put on trial.
And no, this wasn't some weird one-off thing. We have records of at least 85 formal court cases where the defendant was an animal. The list is just incredible. Pigs were the most common offenders, usually for attacking people, but we've also got rats, insects, donkeys, and even dolphins showing up in court. And this little detail just perfectly shows how seriously they took all of this. This wasn't a joke. This pig was found guilty, and for its execution, it was dressed up in human clothes. The line between tragic and absurd was, well, it just wasn't there. And these were real trials with lawyers and verdicts, the whole shebang. A rooster was found guilty for the, quote, unnatural crime of laying an egg. But then you have a monkey who was acquitted because its defense argued it was of, quote, good character. And a donkey was found innocent because it was an unwilling accomplice. You really, truly cannot make this stuff up. Okay, from the courtroom, let's head over to the runway. Medieval fashion wasn't just about covering up. For the wealthy, it was all about showing off, often in some really painful and bizarre ways. So what's this number? 60 centimeters. This was the length of the points on fashionable men's shoes called palanes. That's nearly 2 feet long. The longer your pointy shoe tip, the higher your status. Some were so long they had to be reinforced with whalebone just so the person could walk. Men's fashion was also all about, well, exposure. They wore these ridiculously short tunics over tights, and when that trend faded, it was replaced by the padded codpiece, an accessory designed specifically to draw attention to, well, you know. And women's beauty standards were just as extreme. The ideal look was this high, vast, oval forehead. So to get that look, women would pluck out all of their eyebrows, then all of their eyelashes, and then they'd even pluck their hairline back, all to make their forehead look bigger. I mean, talk about suffering for beauty. Next up, let's talk relationships. If you think modern dating is complicated, the medieval approach to love, marriage, and divorce was on an entirely different planet. See, for the upper class, you had two totally separate kinds of love. Marriage was a business deal. It was about politics, money, and it was often arranged for kids as young as 12. The consummation was even witnessed by guests to make sure the union was valid. Romance? Oh, you had to find that somewhere else, in what was called courtly love, a secret, admiring relationship that was, and this is key, strictly non-physical. So what if your marriage really wasn't working out? Well, in some parts of Germany, you could settle your differences with a divorce by combat. And yes, it is exactly as bonkers as it sounds. It was a legal duel to resolve a marital dispute. And the rules were horrifyingly specific. To even the odds, the man was put in a hole up to his waist with one arm tied behind his back. The woman, meanwhile, was free to move around and was armed with a bag filled with heavy rocks. This was a legally sanctioned and, yeah, potentially lethal way to end a marriage. So with all these rigid rules and bizarre customs, people needed a way to just let off some steam. And there was no bigger release valve than the annual Festival of Fools. This was a day of officially sanctioned,
total chaos. For 24 hours, the entire social order was turned completely upside down. Servants gave orders to their masters, a peasant was crowned king for the day, and all the normal rules of society were just tossed out the window. This was society's official day off. It was a time for wild parades, people dressing in costumes, singing incredibly rude songs, and, of course, a whole lot of drinking. It was a pressure valve that let people mock the authorities and social structures that ruled their lives for the other 364 days of the year. And the absurdity even extended to the dinner table. One of the fanciest dishes you could serve at a feast was this creation: a roasted chicken, sometimes wearing a tiny little helmet, stitched onto the back of a roasted pig, as if it were riding it into battle. You just can't make this up. So after all of that, the animal trials, the deadly football games, the face-plucking, the divorce duels, it's really easy to look back and just laugh. But it also kind of makes you think, doesn't it? What are we doing right now that future generations are going to look back on with total disbelief? What seemingly normal parts of our lives are going to become the bizarre trends in their history books? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.